should be in everyone's glass. I'm shy of the 14. So I would say, for me, this is some of the most interesting sets of vintages that we could line up, because what it does is it shows you the arc of a drought. And so 11, which I really regret, I have some magnums of 11, and if anybody's so inclined, I'm happy to, raise your hand at the end of the night. We'll go set a dinner somewhere, sometime in the near future, and I'll bring some magnums of 11. As well as 10. So back to the library. so 10 was hot. 11 was so cold. 11 was a failure for a lot of the rest of California. If you're in the trap of making these massive extracted wines, 11 was a killer because it didn't get hot. There was no massive, there was no big extraction. But if you were in the practice of making kind of more elegant, more savory style, 11 was a year that we got some rain, and it was really very similar to 2023. We had a decent rain, and it just went on and on and on, and never really got that right until finally it was an act of attrition. At the end, we went, we gotta harvest this stuff, and so we did. 12 begins the drought. And so if 12, 13, and 14 are, opening up now in your glass the way we opened these roughly an hour ago.
About 2.
2 hours. Yeah, say the word. For anybody who doesn't have 14, just raise your hand and we'll pass it around. So 12 to me is probably one of the favorite vintages I've ever produced, because the thing that we have the advantage of here with this climate is it seldom gets real hot, but the season does just stretch on and on and on. And so I've always thought of 12 as being, and forgive the poor analogies, I'm not a sommelier, I don't make my talking about wine, but I think of 12 has always been, it was like Italian couture that was just perfectly cut and single stitched and very, very balanced. It wasn't overdone in any way. It wasn't thin or lacking. And yet, the one thing I haven't talked about is we make wines that were considered kind of on the lower side of alcohol, which Wes is, again, the wordsmith of wine. And one of the things I enjoy that he says, Wes, what is it, that concentration is the enemy of perfume?
Exactly.
And so I think that's a really great way for, it's just interesting that we share a pretty similar ethos about the style of wine that we wanted to engage. And so as you taste through these wines and come back to them, I'll just say 12 was just perfect from the time it was born. It always was taught and stood up straight. It jumped into the perfect close, and I can give you details about the winemaking, but we don't rush these wines in any way. This was 21 months in barrel, which most people will say is a really long time for Pinot Noir, but I learned early on from getting to work with all these wineries that you buy the very best barrel that you can afford to buy, because that's the only thing, with the exception of the glass and the cork, that's going to come between those grapes and your mouth someday. And so the barrels that we started working with years ago were certainly the most expensive barrels that came into California, but it wasn't about expense, it was about extremely tight grain, very long age outside. And so the goal was finding 3-year plus high density of grain. And the way that they say it, and it took me a long time to understand the translation in Burgundy, is that you want a new barrel that tastes like stainless steel. And that, of course, puzzled me for a long time, but the point was, you don't want to taste oak at all. The whole goal is that this should be something that helps build the palate with texture without creating the aromatic or taste imprint of oak. And so, because we make whole cluster wines that already have fairly high tannic content because the stem inclusion. That oak component is something that really winds up, I think of these wines as being a little bit of a singular expression. There's so many people making wine in California and the Central Coast now. I certainly can't say that because of the number of people that there are in the game. But for many years, one of my favorite things is going to a big tasting that would be filled with 100 different wineries. Is after people spent the whole day, I would constantly hear they'd come back and go, not that it was their favorite, they said nothing else tasted like this all day long. And that was the goal. And I guess it wasn't even the goal as much as that was the opportunity. Is did we have something unique that had a story to tell? And if we didn't, let's stop making the wine and just sell these grapes to other